Bioshock, developed by Irrational Games, is a landmark first-person shooter set in the decaying remains of Rapture, an underwater city built on ambition, ego, and a philosophy that promises freedom but delivers ruin. Styled in shimmering art deco and soaked in seawater, Rapture was founded on the radical ideas of objectivism, a world without gods, governments, or guilt. The game begins with a plane crash. You, Jack, stumble into a mysterious lighthouse and descend into this supposed utopia, where there's no taxation, no charity, no oversight. Just pure, unfiltered freedom. But what you actually find is blood on the walls, people mutating their genes, and a society torn apart by the very ideals it was built on. At the heart of it all is objectivism, a worldview pioneered by Ayn Rand. In short, it argues that the highest moral purpose of life is rational self-interest, that altruism is a vice, that the pursuit of individual happiness, regardless of the cost to others, is the noblest aim. In The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, Rand champions their philosophy, framing capitalism as salvation and empathy as weakness. Andrew Ryan, the founder of Rapture, is her ideological avatar, his name even a partial anagram of hers. Most readings of Bioshock frame it as sharp critique of objectivism. Rapture in this view doesn't fall because its people fail to live up to its ideals, but because they follow them too well. In a world where science has no brakes and markets are God, where compassion is a threat to progress, collapse isn't an accident, it's inevitable. But Bioshock goes even deeper than that. It doesn't just criticize one philosophy, it explores how any belief system, no matter how idealistic, can become a prison. The game isn't just anti-Rand, it's anti-dogma. Throughout Rapture we see what happens when people become possessed by ideology, when belief takes over and starts calling the shots. That's the real horror. Not the splices, not the big daddies, but the invisible hand guiding your every move. To get at that, we need to meet a thinker whose work practically predicted Bioshock's core dilemma, and his name was Max Stirner. Stirner, born in 1806, was a 19th century German philosopher, radical, rebellious, and often overlooked. In 1844 he published The Ego and Its Own, a book that detonated like a philosophical bomb in the middle of Germany's post-Hegelian debates. While others wrestled with grand ideas like state, religion, and revolution, Stirner rejected them all. To him, these weren't noble pursuits, they were spooks. That's the word he used. Spooks. Not ghosts, not spirits, but spooks. Creeping ideas that haunt us. To Stirner, a spook is any concept we allow to control us. Justice, freedom, humanity, the state, God. These are not tangible things, they are abstractions. Yet people organize their entire lives around them, as if they were sacred and eternal. Stirner believed we are haunted by these ideas. We internalize them, obey them, serve them. And in doing so, we sacrifice our individuality on the altar of something that doesn't even exist outside our minds. That's Stirner's great accusation. Whether you worship a god, serve the revolution, or pledge yourself to science, it's all the same. You're still living for a spook. Even when we think we escaped dogma, we just build new ones. Stirner didn't care if any ideology was religious, or secular, leftist, or capitalist. His warning was simple: if you treat any idea as higher than yourself, it will own you. So, what's the alternative? Stirner proposed the idea of the unique one, a person who refuses to be ruled by ideals. The unique one sees all systems, all beliefs, all values as tools, not masters. They don't submit to truth, or morality, or identity. They live by a self-will. Not in the shallow sense of selfishness, but in a radical sense of freedom. They act because they choose to, not because an ideology tells them they should. As Stirner famously writes, "I've based my affairs on nothing." This idea was decades ahead of its time. You can feel Stirner's fingerprints on Nietzsche's will to power, on existentialism's obsession with authenticity, and on anarchism's rejection of authority. But Stirner goes further. Even existentialists like Sartre believed we had some obligation to humanity. But Stirner says, nope, emancipation means escaping every should, every moral chain, every internalized belief that dares to speak louder than your own voice. When someone says, I'm a capitalist or I'm a rationalist, Stirner would raise an eyebrow, because once you define yourself by an idea, it stops being a choice, it becomes a leash. So Stirner leaves that with a challenge. Are you using your ideas, or are your ideas using you? So with Max Stirner's lens in hand, Rapture stops looking like just another sci-fi dystopia. It becomes something darker, a case study in ideological possession. On the surface, Rapture is a city built to escape the chains of external authority. No gods, no kings, only men. But dig a little deeper and that motto reveals its own trap. The people of Rapture didn't escape their masters, they just swapped them out. They traded old gods for new ones, spooks in shinier clothes. Stirner specters are everywhere in Rapture. Citizens speak not from personal desire, but in language of abstraction. Progress, merit, science, individualism, beauty, strength, survival. These are the city's new sacreds, unquestioned and untouchable. The irony is savage. They believed they were free, yet they lived by doctrine. Rapture wasn't a rebellion against ideology, it was a cathedral built to worship it. Look close and you'll see it. The artist splices his figures' bodies in pursuit of some divine beauty. The scientist shreds ethics in the name of progress. The businessman hoards wealth beneath the holy banner of meritocracy. The worker mutates his DNA to chase an ideal of self-improvement. No one is simply being, everyone is becoming, molding themselves to fit a script written by ideology. This is Stirner's warning in action. The problem isn't belief, the danger comes when belief owns you. When it becomes your identity, your purpose, your morality, that's when a thought becomes a spook. And in Rapture, everyone is haunted. Even as the city drowns, its people cling to these ghosts, fighting, killing, dying for meaning. They've confused obedience for liberation. That's not freedom, that's slavery in a new costume. Rapture's downfall wasn't selfishness, it wasn't cruelty, it was submission. No one in Rapture lived as a unique one. No one stepped back to ask, do I want this? Does this serve me? No one questioned the sacredness of the ideas guiding them. They didn't live for themselves, they lived for principles. And they died for them. Andrew Ryan calls himself a liberator. The architect of Rapture, he imagined his city as a final break from tyranny. No kings, no gods, no government. In Ryan's eyes, man would be free at last, to own his labor, to shape his fate, to rise without interference. His anthem is choice. His enemy is control. At first glance, Ryan seems like Stirner's unique one. He tears down the old system, builds a world from nothing, and demands only what he earns. But Stirner never preached simple rejection. His philosophy wasn't about being against God or states. It was about never mistaking any idea for truth, never letting any abstraction rule you. And in this, Ryan fails completely. He casts out church and state, only to kneel before a new God, the self-made man. The builder, the titan, the creator who owes nothing and earns everything. This figure isn't just admired, it's worshipped. And anyone who threatens the myth is branded a heretic. Smugglers, unionists, artists, scientists. Dissent isn't punished because it causes harm, it's punished because it defiles Ryan's vision. For all his talk of freedom, Ryan builds a society of surveillance, propaganda, secret police, and public executions. In Rapture, liberty is conditional. You are free as long as you believe what Andrew Ryan believes. This is Ryan's greatest contradiction. He thinks he's acting freely, but he's been consumed by his ideology. He doesn't just believe in the idea of the self-made man, he's become his disciple. His entire identity is defined by a single abstraction. He no longer distinguishes between what he wants and what his philosophy requires. He's not choosing, he's obeying a higher law he wrote for himself, and now cannot break. His famous line, "A man chooses, a slave obeys," is meant as a declaration of will, but under Stirner's lens it's something much sadder. His death is the ultimate performance. He forces the player to kill him, repeating his mantra again and again. But in that moment Ryan isn't choosing, he's surrendering. Not to the player but to his own idea of purity. He dies not as a free man, but as a martyr to his myth. Even at the end, he cannot step outside the system he built. He doesn't want to live outside it. His death becomes one final act of ideological obedience. Stirner might ask, did Andrew Ryan ever truly choose? Or was he, from the very beginning, just another man obeying a master? The market, the myth, the spook of the self-made. If Andrew Ryan is a tyrant possessed by ideology, then Jack, the silent protagonist, is something even more haunting, a man without ego. In Stirnian terms, Jack isn't merely unfree, he is absent. No will, no self. From the moment he steps into Rapture, Jack appears as a blank slate, neutral, stoic, the ideal player avatar. He helps people, fights enemies, makes moral choices. But it's all an illusion. Every decision Jack seems to make is revealed as programming. The major twist of the game shows Jack as a child being conditioned to obey hearing a certain code phrase. Would you kindly? He believes he's choosing, but is only following orders. This is Stirner's nightmare come to life. For Stirner, freedom isn't about movement, it's about origin. Where does the action come from? From yourself, or from a script you have unknowingly internalized? Jack fails this test completely. He doesn't question his motives, doesn't resist commands, doesn't assert desire, because he can't. The spooks live in him so deeply he can't even see them. In Sir's eyes, Jack isn't an egoist, is an empty vessel. He has no self-interest because he has no self. His arc until the revelation is shaped entirely by submission, not to a god or a government, but to a sentence. A gentle phrase that strips away any illusion of autonomy. Jack becomes the ultimate warning. Motion isn't freedom. If Jack represents anything, it is this: the tragic potential to live without ever truly being yourself. At first glance, Frank Fontaine looks like the closest thing Rapture has to a Stirnian egoist. He bends rules, slips through ideologies, reinvents himself on a whim. Conman, revolutionary, businessman. While Andrew Ryan chains himself to principle, Fontaine shapeshifts. He mocks the very ideas others hold sacred. He doesn't believe in capitalism, altruism, rebellion or order, but he knows how to weaponize them all. In a world haunted by spooks, Fontaine seems like the one man who sees through the illusion. And that's exactly what makes him dangerous. From a Stirnian perspective, egoism isn't about rebellion or manipulation, it's about refusing to be ruled. Even by the idea of winning, the true egoist uses ideologies like tools, but never becomes possessed by the outcomes they promise. Power, status, victory, these aren't goals, they're illusions too. Fontaine fails his test spectacularly. He doesn't live outside the system, he just plays it better. He cloaks himself in egoist performance. Beneath the mask, he's just another ideologue. His god isn't morality or capitalism or revolution. His god is power, and he serves it faithfully. Fontaine's rebellion is a con not to liberate but to conquer. He stages a populist uprising not because he believes in the people, but because he needs an audience to manipulate. He mocks spooks but only to install himself as a new one. He doesn't reject ideology, he exploits it, and in doing so he becomes its slave. To Stirner, that's not egoism, it's submission with better branding. Fontaine doesn't act from self-will, he acts from hunger. His self is wrapped up in domination, in being above others, controlling them, defining himself through conquest. That's not freedom, that's dependence. He needs people to need him, to fear him, to worship him. He doesn't use them as tools, he feeds on them like a parasite. His sense of worth is built on hierarchy, validation, control. Every one of those is a spook. Even his shifting identities aren't signs of liberation. They are masks, tools for performance, not expression of the self. He doesn't change because he enjoys it, he changes to win, to deceive, to conquer, to become a king in a city that claimed to kill kings. In that way, Fontaine is no freer than Andrew Ryan. Ryan is possessed by principle, Fontaine is possessed by the illusion that he is free. And in Stirner's eyes, that might be the worst spook of all. In its final act of brilliance, Bioshock turns its gaze inwards. Not at Ryan, not at Jack, and not even at Rapture. It looks at you. The infamous twist doesn't just strip Jack of his agency, it strips you of yours. The game doesn't just ask him if he ever chose, it asks you were you ever in control. And if we're honest, the answer is no. You followed the arrow, you completed objectives, you did what the game asked, politely, efficiently, without question. You pulled the trigger, you flipped the switch, you spared or harvested the little sisters. But were those choices ever truly yours? Or they already woven into a system, a narrative, a morality mechanic, a logic of reward and consequence? You thought you were acting freely, but you were obeying. Because ideology doesn't always bark. Sometimes it flatters, sometimes it nudges, and sometimes it whispers, "Would you kindly?" So where does it leave us? The city is gone, Jack has escaped, Ryan is dead and Fontaine is defeated. The game is over. You see, The issue with Stirner is he doesn't offer a structured alternative to the ideologies he attacks. He doesn't end with a call to revolution, a vision of a better society, or even a clear ethical code. Instead, he deconstructs, then steps back, inviting each person to act purely from their own will. He offers a mirror and a match. The mirror to see the spooks we serve, the match to burn them down. Every ideal that's become a master, every identity that claims you, every should that doesn't serve your pleasure, your power, your joy. Stirner's radical proposition is simple to say and brutally hard to live. You owe nothing to ideas, nothing to systems, nothing to gods, nation, causes or codes. You owe only to yourself, if you choose to own that self. But most of us don't. It's easy, almost automatic to slip into scripts, to act out roles we've inherited, to call it morality when we are only obeying, to call it love when we are only sacrificing, to call it purpose when we are only conforming. We speak in certain ways that keep us safe, we vote in ways that feel righteous, we nod along to stay agreeable. But how much of it really is ours? Do we act for our sake? Do we speak for our sake? Do we suffer for our sake? Do we choose, or do we obey?